Hello, I'm James Andrews, a reporter with Food Safety News. I'm here at IAFP 2013, and I'm talking with Jason Tetro, the germ guy. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
First off, thank you for having me here. As the germ guy, I have really two roles. The first is a germ evangelist. I essentially speak for germs because they have really not really had many people speak for them in the past. But I'm also a germs relationship therapist. And what I mean by that is I'm trying to bring about awareness with individuals so that they can not only respect germs, but also learn how to coexist with them in a way that is a little bit more friendly than what we've had in the past, which has essentially been akin to war.
Genocide, perhaps.
Yes.
What are you doing here at IAFP specifically?
Well, at IAFP, I have been here to help out one of the companies that I'm consulting with to show that, again, in a way of relationship, we can actually do something I call passive disinfection, whereby we're actually using something that's impregnated in a paper towel to wash hands the same way we normally do, but then actually, thanks to this paper towel, increase the safety of the hands. And so I'm here to promote this and also to show people that when it comes to getting along with germs, we don't always have to be out there constantly actively trying to attack them. We can just passively, ignore them. And sometimes, kind of like what Gandhi said, if you can just passively ignore them, then they tend to go away better.
I was excited to hear that you'd been talking about colony collapse disorder and specifically germs killing bees. Is that right? Or germ relationship with bees? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, no problem. Colony collapse disorder is one of the, greatest threats at the moment to not only our agriculture but to our food systems. We are seeing a potentially $2.5 billion industry go down the drain. Now, that may not mean a heck of a lot to people who are in food safety because at the end of the day, what does a bee have to do with the food? Well, where that comes in is the fact that bees are involved in pollination. And in the case of almonds in California, 60% are actually due to pollination. So if we were to reduce the number of bees, let's just say from 2.5 million, which we have today, to 1.5 million, what would end up happening is that we wouldn't have enough bee population to colonize or pollinate almonds, and we'd actually lose the crops. So when you look at food safety, it actually turns into food security, in that if we lose the bees, we lose the crops. Where it comes into the people for food safety news, however, is the importance of what's causing this in the bees. And that's something called nosema, which is a unicellular parasite, and also a mite, which is called varroa. And these two have been at war with the bees for centuries, and there's actually been a bit of a Cold War. But for some reason, the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a decline in the bees' ability to fight these particular pathogens. Now, in the last few months, we've actually seen that exposure to certain types of chemicals, these neonicotinoids, is actually causing immunodeficiency problems in bees. So essentially, through this pesticide and fungicide exposure, the bees are essentially turning into what we would consider as a human population to be an HIV individual, someone who is immunocompromised. And what's interesting to us in microbiology is that the nosema only affects humans who are immunocompromised, such as those with HIV.
Wow.
So we now have an HIV pandemic. Well, now we're starting to see the same in bees. And so this is really the problem that we're facing. And we have to come up with ways to try and change the landscape, if you will, so that we are not hindering our bee populations, which then leads to infection and then leads to death and then leads to the collapse not only of the colony but of our agricultural system.
Wow. You mentioned perhaps one of the solutions to this being genetically modified bees. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been looking at a number of different ways that we can improve this. And earlier this year, the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, released a report. And one of the report recommendations was to look at the genetics of the bees and to find out whether or not there may be ways to improve the function of the bees to fight off these particular pathogens or to resist the effects of the pesticides. Now, we've already seen this in mosquitoes, where we're genetically modifying mosquitoes such that they can't reproduce and therefore they won't have dengue. Well, what this could potentially lead to is the development of genetically modified bees, or GMBs, if you will. And while it may sound humorous, it is one of the options that we face if we choose not to take the more obvious routes, which would be cross-cropping. In other words, you do use a different crop every year, crop rotation, if you will, or simply to reduce the use of pesticides and fungicides, especially during a flowering season.
I guess when it comes to GMOs, we've got so much controversy over GMO labeling right now. Do you think it's possible in the future we could have apples or almonds labeled, pollinated by genetically modified bees?
Although we may not see pollinated by genetically modified bees, we may actually see pollinated by robotic bees. And there's a group out of Harvard that now have robotic bees that are actually doing pollination in place of our actual bee counterparts. However, quite honestly, when it comes to being able to maintain our agricultural stocks, I think all of us would feel much safer and much more alive knowing that we have natural black and yellow striped buzzers, as opposed to perhaps the drones that are created in Harvard or the potential for our GMBs.
Jason, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk with us. Is there anything else you'd like to let our readers know before I let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. As the germ guy, I talk about forming this relationship with germs. But as we've just talked about with the bee, it is a very complex situation. And so I don't expect everybody to be able to understand how germs and humans interact, whether it be through food, whether it be through health, whether it be through, just recreational activities. But what I would like people to know, and what I would like people to understand, is that there are people like myself who try and make it as simple as possible for everybody to understand. And that the more that we do the efforts to try and make it easy, we just hope that you'll be able to take what we've given you and make your lives better, whether it be through a better relationship with germs or at least a better understanding as to how to avoid the ones that really could cause you a problem.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it.
It was an absolute pleasure.